look at the top 5 reasons that Rey defeated Kylo Ren in The Force Awakens. And I know that whole lightsaber duel between Rey and Kylo Ren in The Force Awakens is kind of a sticking point for some people. They're a little bothered by it. They don't quite understand or like that Rey was able to defeat him. But I think there are actually some very good reasons why this occurred. And originally, I thought that way too. I thought, how is she so strong and able to defeat somebody that has been training for so much longer than her? That typically doesn't happen. So, but anyway, let's look at some reasons why that happened, or some possible reasons. So, the first reason I'll say is kind of the one that people think of sometimes as the only reason, and that's why it bothers them. So, Rey's really strong in the Force, so she just has this really raw Force energy, and if you think of that as the only reason, that doesn't seem like quite enough for her to defeat him. But if you pair that with several of these other reasons, I think that it kind of fits a little better. So you really can't deny how powerful she is, even though presumably she's untrained with the lightsaber or with other Jedi skills. So that's the top reason. Another reason that she won probably was, well, Kylo was injured. So he got hit, he got clipped by Chewbacca's bowcaster shortly after he killed Han Solo, because Chewbacca was really upset, as you would imagine, killed his buddy, Han. And so Kylo gets clipped in the shoulder by the bowcaster, and in the duel, he even kind of like hits his shoulder a few times, which implies that it's kind of bothering him, giving him some trouble. So that injury does give Kylo kind of a handicap, a disadvantage to Rey. Another thing that maybe people are not considering too much is think how closely that duel occurs after he killed his father, Han Solo. It's not that long afterwards. And Kylo, we already know, is pretty emotionally unstable and conflicted. He was right up to the moment that he killed Han Solo, as well as other moments throughout the film. So, how is he feeling at this moment during the duel? He's probably not entirely there. He's probably feeling depleted emotionally, since he does kind of have that different emotionality to him, and he's never quite light side or dark side. So, yeah, that kind of lack of presence and just the emotional drain of his previous experience, that would decrease his skills in the lightsaber duel. Now, another big reason that people might forget about is it doesn't really look like Kylo actually really wants to harm Rey. He makes that appeal to her during the duel. You need a teacher, I can show you the ways of the Force. So if you have somebody that you want to take on as a student, you're probably not going to go full force, and no pun intended, full force and try to kill them. That just doesn't make logical sense, even for a dark side user. So he seems to have some kind of fascination in Rey. We don't know the reason yet. Maybe they're related, maybe he knows her some other way, or maybe he just can sense her raw potential, and those would be reasons that he doesn't want to hurt her. He sees her more as somebody that he could train, a potential ally. So that to me is one of the most important reasons, actually, that there's a lot of evidence that Kylo doesn't want to harm her. And even if you compare when Finn is fighting against Kylo Ren versus when Rey is fighting against Kylo Ren, during the duel with Finn, Kylo uses the crossguard on his lightsaber and punctures Finn's shoulder, and he kind of cuts him up the back, and he shows this really visceral anger to Finn, especially when he yells out "traitor," and so he doesn't have that same animosity toward Rey. Another comparison is if you kind of rewind much earlier in the film when Kylo is interrogating Rey, he reaches into her mind, and that's very unsettling, but he doesn't physically harm her at all. And if you compare that to Poe Dameron, who is also interrogated by the First Order and Kylo, Poe Dameron, there's a scene where he's screaming, and you also see that his face gets kind of bloodied up from being interrogated. So that shows that he endured some physical pain in his interrogation, whereas with Rey, we don't see that same thing. So that's kind of an earlier hint at Kylo's fascination with Rey and Kylo not wanting to harm Rey. And the last reason I'm going to bring up for Rey doing really well in the lightsaber duel and winning is, okay, even though she's not trained in the lightsaber, she is very skilled with swinging around the staff. So, like at the very beginning of The Force Awakens, she takes care of herself. She has that staff and, you know, beats up those people with it and wins very handily. So, even, well, whether she's using the Force or not at that moment, she's showing some skill. So that is something she's probably cultivated over the years. She kind of has a certain scrappiness and street smarts, and so that would translate into her skill in the lightsaber duel against Kylo Ren. So anyway, those are the 5 reasons I think that Rey did so well and she won the lightsaber duel. First one is her raw force energy. Second reason is Kylo is injured, so he's not, full strength Kylo versus full strength Rey would be much more fair of a fight. Another third factor is Kylo's emotional state. He's presumably very emotionally drained from killing his father and, other things that are going on. 4, Kylo really doesn't want to harm Ren. There's several examples of that in the film. And then 5, Rey already has skills swinging around his staff, and even though staff isn't exactly the same as a lightsaber, some of that should be able to carry over into the lightsaber dueling. So those would be my 5 reasons, and I'm sure we'll see some kind of rematch in the next movie. That is very Star Wars of a thing to happen. So we'll see what happens there. It's probably going to be more of a fair fight, or, I mean, yeah, maybe even Kylo will kind of have his revenge and Rey will lose. That's a very common thing to happen in Star Wars, that somebody wins one day and they lose the next. And so you got to keep things interesting that way. Anyway, those are just some of my thoughts on why Rey won the lightsaber